Hi, are we on? I hope so. How's the lighting? Um, Oddly, I think it was like this last time. Um, I, I received a message today, ironically, as you'll find out, from Stephen Moore, asking where his copies of the latest of our Chandler Brossard publications, which we'll get to. It's this one, Over the Rainbow, Hardly. Uh, just came out, but long enough ago that Stephen Moore should have gotten his copies. He gets free copies because he's been helping our press make our Brossard publications not only more presentable, but as presentable as possible, as accurate as possible. He was often savaged by publishers via alternative titling of his books. And I think, what was it? This one, The Wolf Leaps, the original title. I think the first published version might have been in '73, but I'm not sure that was called "Did Christ Make Love?" And, that just Brossard has a weird, or had a weird sense of titling. I don't think he had the sense of entitlement that you might think I'm referring to in a sort of backhand way. No, no, he didn't have that, but he did have the sort of the ability to channel the subconscious in the way that it works, or the semi-subconscious, perhaps. I don't know. The way that mine works, and all these hesitations and odd things that occur to me, and these discursions and that never return. All of that, which strikes me as rather embarrassing when I get on this and I start saying too much. One day I'm gonna go to a clinic and have that word removed from my chest, which is where these words reside. Like lymph nodes, rebel lymph nodes. That's what these uhs and whatever we don't want to say but can't help but say. Um, I'm not referring to the nasty words that I have in my mouth, that I use too often when I'm angry. Um, and please don't be judgmental about that, because when I get angry, I'm not that angry, and it's still all very funny to me. And that's a characteristic of Broussard too. Only it's the other way around. He seems like he doesn't give a shit, and he's just farting around, and he's not angry, but he is angry. He's very angry. Um, but in the prose, he's so angry that he just says, "Fuck it, nothing matters." And I know that a good critic like Stephen Moore would be able to express this in a much better way. But for that, fucking read Stephen Moore. I think you should start with My Back Pages, because this is where I discovered um, Chandler Brossard, and I've determined that this is someone I've got to read. And that led to us publishing him because he was out of print. Everything that mattered by him was out of print. And I'm not talking about his first two books, the ones everybody knows, or some people know. If they know anything about Brossard, they know his so-called beat era novels. I don't think they were beat novels, and I don't think he appreciated being clustered in with beats. He probably didn't mind hanging out with beats. I don't know. He did hang out with William Gaddis. I don't think he minded that either. I really don't know. But he did like drinking, and for that, read The Double Dealers, the afterword by his daughter, which is very, very sad and funny. But back to Stephen Moore. He wrote to remind me, I should be sending him. I mean, the first thing I should do when I pick up a Brossard book is send one copy to Zach Tanner, who usually writes the introduction and does put the cover and the typography all together. and to Stephen Moore, because he's the one responsible for us even having the opportunity. And I said the other day that the best thing we've done as a press is to revive, or to actually publish for the first time in English, the proper novel by Roberto Arlt that consists of two parts, that one of which was published in translation first in I think 84, and was extremely well translated. And anyway, the second half was never translated until we met with, I met Larry Riley, who had translated it, and learned Spanish in order simply to translate that. Or actually, not, that's not so simple, but that's the story. Working class Larry, diehard leftist, reads more about the Spanish Civil War than anyone you'll ever meet, but also about the troubles in Ireland. And he knows literature and he knows the world, and he actually wanted so badly, as I did, to read the second part of Arlt's great book that he actually went out and translated it. I just went, oh, it's not translated? Fuck. But Larry said, it's not translated? Fuck, I better do it. And he did. And the amazing thing was that he did that about 20 years before we got it published, because first of all, he didn't know how good a job he had done. When he sent it to me, I said to myself, this is one of those discursions, by the way. He said to me, that he was told that it wasn't quite there. It wasn't quite there. But I read it, and by 2 pages, I said, that's fucking Arlt. You've got it. All we have to do is, just do some cleansing, fixing, whatever. And he dove back in, and whatever he did, it worked really well. So we have that. But as the best thing our press has ever done, well, it's not better than reviving Chandler Brossard, or getting Chandler Brossard back into print. And that story started with me picking up Stephen Moore's My Back Pages. And when you read about Brossard in here, when I read about Brossard in here, I thought, how did I miss this? This guy is fucking amazing. I knew that before I read any. And then I tried to find some, and it was all out of print. And Stephen Moore made the contacts with the family and so on, and made it very easy for us to get it back into print. First thing he did was he took the book, the last published Brossard, which was Over the Rainbow Hardly, and he, on my request, he took this short novel out of it and prepared it for us. This is called Raging Joys, Sublime Violations. That's a very good title. And so, well, it was also Zach's second cover for us. And he wasn't good enough yet with the technique to present the full cover that was in his mind. This woman is being taken away by an ape, or running off with an ape, more likely. And that the ape got cut. And so, someday I'd like to get the ape back in there. In honor of Brossard, I'm not going to make any apologies for our content or his, but there's a very good reason that this book was, this cover was made by Zach with the Priapik Kennedy, the Lyndon Johnson getting the blowjob, and Dick Nixon with the dick gun, and the woman with the ape, and my favorite part, Henry Kissinger finishing off a baby's head, all perfectly in line with the novel and real life. What's great about Brossard, above all, is the absolute freedom with which he wrote. But that includes some things that you have to accept, like, oh, this is not making an excuse, even though I said but. It includes that, his acceptance of a world, and he is accepting the world. He's pretty disgusted by it, the literary world maybe in particular, but also the way the U.S. has behaved in the world and so on. So he is so disgusted that he said, no more rules, at least none that you'll understand. My rules, Brossard's rules, the subconscious and history together will carry him forward until he's done writing. And in this book, you get a good taste of it with the excerpt that I'm going to read right now. There's sometimes the humor is adolescent humor, and if you've ever been an adolescent, you'll know how funny adolescent humor can be. So don't knock it, all right? But he combines that with historical precision and social subversion. Nothing's off limits to Chandler Brossard. Now, chapter 11 of Raging Joy, Sublime Violations. Daughters of Sappho, arise. Shower with your lovers without fear of reprisal. Give vent to sudden urges, and may tomorrow's floating Deutschmark be damned. Sexist shame is the dish of fools. Second guess your last blowjob no longer. Come with us to the Kasbah and watch two real crowd pleasers do their stuff. Henry Cabot Lodge and Jack Kennedy kicking off hordes of angels as they dance on the head of a pin. Listen, Henry, says Jack, doing his 15th push-up. Things are getting pretty hairy in Saigon, and that's not just a rumor. You're not telling me anything I don't know already, Jack, says Henry, cleaning out the last of his toe jam. The center is collapsing, and the beast is pawing at Jerusalem. Can the Yates routine, Henry, and let's get down to brass tacks. That fat little dink, Jim, has got to go. He's top fuck-up of the year, and he's behind on his rent to boot. I thought he was the Churchill of Asia, said Henry, plucking out some nose hairs. Jack threw his jockstrap at Henry. You're very cute, Henry. Keep it up and you'll be pounding a beat in Harlem. Okay, just tell me what you want me to do. Want me to set him up for a child molesting rap? For Christ's sake, Henry, think big, will you? This show isn't working the downstairs room at Benny's Deli. Jack looked at his basket in the mirror and obviously liked what he saw. His boxer shorts were custom made and they boasted a color photo of Marilyn Monroe's face, mostly mouth. The little jerk has to be bumped off. You read me now? And of course, this is what really happened. Everybody, you ask Oliver Stone about Kennedy. He was killed because he was gonna pull us out of Vietnam. Oh, bullshit. He had Jim killed about a week or two before he was bumped off. No, that wasn't the case. Henry rubbed Chanel deodorant under his armpits. Loud and clear, Jack. Believe that chances of Jim's meeting over our demands are virtually nil. At the same time, by making them, we give new chance to forestall or block action by military. Risk, we believe, is not worth taking. What happened to his prose here? Well, I believe he's using real cables from the time. Brossard has just inserted them into the dialogue. With new in control of combat forces in Saigon. Therefore, propose we go straight to generals with our demands without informing them. Would tell them we prepared. Yeah, said Jack, stepping into his pants. You work out the kinks in your own way, long as you make a touchdown. He laid out a great fart and sighed happily. Essential that this effort be totally secure and fully deniable and separated from normal political analysis and supporting and reporting and other activities of country team. More memo talk. I'll sure keep my lip buttoned, said Henry. You better, or else it's your ass, hen baby. Henry's face sort of collapsed, and he seemed about to cry or something. Jesus, Jack, I need a rest from all this hurly-burly. I sure would appreciate it if you could transfer me to agriculture or fisheries and wildlife. I've always loved creamed codfish. Jack looked at him real mean. I hate crybabies, Henry. They're the lowest. If you're not man enough for the job, just say so, and I'll get Lucky Luciano to replace you. Oh, Jack, give me a break, will you? Pull yourself together, Buster, and get this fucking show on the road, or else. Do I need to read more? I'm getting, this is taking a bit longer than I thought it would. But anyway, that's the first novel that we published. I'll be quicker with the second one. This, to me, is the masterpiece. These are the two big ones, but I think this is the masterpiece. And I don't remember. I just have a short. Okay. Here's an excerpt. This book is just. I think Stephen Moore calls it the Brossard's uh, uh, something summary or whatever of the '60s. His '60s novel, um, and it's wild. Um, Let me just start in the middle of a conversation. I sure did, Josh, baby. Tell me, is that terribly attractive Air Force major going to be at the party today? You mean Severn? The guy who runs the new air base at Dang Wong? Is he the one who knows all about those simply amazing new airplanes our side is going to get? The ones that are faster than the ones those Russians are giving the VC? If Severn doesn't know, then nobody does. I like him. He's so homey and relaxed. And she gave Josh a smile that made him want to push his small-breasted, civic-minded suburban wife in front of a New York subway train. BC Intelligence had told April that Severn had once lived in the village and had written music. Oh, so that was just to show, the range of humor. We have the creamed codfish in the last one. That's why I read to that point. I wanted to get the creamed codfish in, and here, he made him want to push his small-breasted civic-minded. I think it says civic mind. I think I found a typo. How fortuitous! Suburban wife in front of a New York subway train. Yeah, so he's just burning on down the road with his prose. This one was. This is As the Wolf Howls at My Door, which would be his 70s novel, I guess, more or less, if we're going to go by decades. Let's see, where was I going to? Okay. Fake, fraud, she howled when shit-faced Kissinger proclaimed peace is at hand. Swindle, cheat, she howled when Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and Mitchell got only 2 years for their Watergate crimes. She has eyes for Leonore, among other things, though we, in the royal sense, don't mean to suggest by any strength of the imagination that said woman is to be seen, as they say, as a thing. Shades of Buber. That I read to this point because this guy also is familiar with Martin Buber. I mean, this is like Henry Miller. You tend to forget what an intellect he was, though she most certainly does have a thing, and a very nice one it is. Kenna would be among the very first, if not the first, to say so. And who should know better than she when you get right down to it? Which is precisely where Kenna spends a fair amount of time, it must be said, now that the subject has been raised. This is what I'd call getting right down to it, she has said with her face between Leonora's thighs and her tongue darting devilishly up and down Leonora's delicate trembling skin and into the fathomless sweetness of her muff. Tongue to pussy. A tongue in the bush is worth two in the bank, particularly if that bank has no hands, or is made of mud, or is on the west side where those sneaky Israelis are building settlements around the clock, like they were ants or something, and step by step pushing those poor, scabby Arabs closer and closer to total oblivion, which is where nobody in their right mind wants to be. I don't care how many scabs they might have. Anyway, that was badly read, but very well written, and you can see how definitely on point he is, if not. What do they call it when you can see the future? Prescient. Anyway, next book. Did Christ make love? Well, we used, and this is where, especially having contact with a critic who really knows the guy, or knew the guy, comes in. We get the titles that Brossard wanted. Brossard, uh, the posthumous, Brossard gets what he wanted when he was alive. So he gets The Wolf Leaps, which is what he wanted. And the funny thing about this, about a priest in Harlem and his sex drive. But I think I've got my bookmark right here, and it's at Zach Tanner's Sure, Christ Fucked, but Was He on Top? That's his title. And I'm just going to read a brief passage here. I first read Did Christ Make Love in February of 2021, in the middle of a 6-month study of Brossard that I was undertaking while writing my introductions to the Corona Samizdat reprints of Brossard's 2 mammoth novels, Wake Up, We're Almost There, and As the Wolf Howls at My Door. In light of my scholarly endeavor, I bought all the Brossard I could get my hands on. My copy of Did Christ Make Love, 1973, which I purchased for $60, which was the only copy I could find on the internet. As I write this introduction, I can find absolutely no copies online. I read it over the course of an afternoon, most likely over 3 or 4 tequila ice limes, for I was drinking heavily while on antidepressants at the time. Oh, Zach. Which I would not mention, but to note that the liberated imagination of Chandler Brossard's fiction was essential to my recovery. At this point, I was about 9 months into my daily ongoing conversation with Rick Harsh, who had introduced me to Brossard, but a few months before when he asked me to introduce his paperback edition of Wake Up. Like I said, I read this book in one inebriated sitting, not counting the trips from my shed to the kitchen and back. And when I put it down, I likely sent a rough snapshot of my blurry, sweating mason jar next to the book with something along the lines of, not true what they say, Brossard can write a plot, and better than the rest, as well as the bard himself. I gushed about the book until it was time to move on with my day, thinking little of it, but of my next drink, which would taste sweeter thanks to the afterglow of reading a novel. But within the hour, Rick had written the estate. The person working on the introduction to Wolf has told me that we should publish Did Christ Make Love? Can I have your permission? Soon after, Rick wrote Stephen Moore, who had been providing guest editorial directions on behalf of his friend Chandler for us since we reprinted Raging Joy Sublime Violations, about our edition of this book, and he said, "That's great news about Did Christ Make Love, though I hope you will use Brossard's original and preferred title, The Wolf Leaps." He also passed along a copy of a foreword he wrote for an edition that was supposed to come out 20 years ago but didn't, which has remained unpublished until now, in which he refers to The Wolf Leaps as the least known of Brossard's novels, the scarcest on the used book market, and the only one not to have been reprinted as a paperback in his lifetime. And then he goes on to talk more about that. And I guess, we have a 20-year-old foreword by Stephen Moore, part of the book, The Wolf Leaps. And then we got what in some ways is my favorite. Actually, no. My favorite, absolute favorite, it's a tie between Raging Joy, Sublime Violations, and Wake Up, We're Almost There. Eventually, they'll all be tied. It's all one thing to me. I think you can pass a nice winter with Brossard, or summer, or a year. Anyway, read Arlt and Brossard, one after the other. The Double Dealers. I can't remember what the original title was, but it wasn't The Double Dealers. That was what Brossard wanted, so it was obviously not the one that was chosen. But this one, I talked a bit about this the other day, so I won't go on. It's got a great cover. It's a great novel, and we'll get to that. But first, I want to read just a little bit from one of the best introductions I've ever read in my life, which is also by Zach Tanner. It's called The Janus-Faced Nickel Even Rimbaud Couldn't Have Dreamed Up. And this is how he starts it. The month after we received permission to reprint this novel for the first time ever with Chandler Brossard's original title to boot, I received an email from the captain of the Brossard Studies flagship, Stephen Moore, whose idea it was, as with our edition of The Wolf Leaps, aka Did Christ Make Love, to use the better unpublished author's preferred title. And here's what he got from this is the beginning of the letter from Stephen Moore. I just finished reading Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, one of those classics I had never got around to reading when young, and was startled to see Stevenson use double dealer in the same sense that Brossard does. The compound word has been around since the 16th century, and I'm not suggesting Brossard was inspired by Dr. J and Mr. H, though I'm guessing he read it at some point. But the entire 2-page passage I've attached resonates so well with what Brossard characters are up to that it might be worth pursuing. This passage occurs near the beginning of the final chapter if you want to find the context. And then the passage in context, or in question, sorry. And then, so Tanner goes on to sort of co-author some graduate studies level criticism or evaluation is a better word of Brossard's intentions and technique. And before he gets to his own, I'll read you the I think it's like 6 pages before he actually gets back to his own words, because he's giving the context of Jekyll and Hyde, of Brossard, and the text of a letter from Stephen Moore, which ends with well, this is the review of one paragraph review of the book by Stephen Moore. The Double View is a nervy, compact book written with economy and a flair for unusual imagery, accomplishing in fewer than 200 pages what Brossard's friend William Gaddis spent nearly 1,000 pages doing in the Recognitions, admittedly in greater depth, namely to chart a pilgrim's progress from hell through purgatory, leaving him poised for a paradisiacal rediscovery of authenticity and atonement. So that's the review of the book. I'm not going to try to add or subtract from that. And then finally, the last book, minus Raging Joys and Sublime Violations, which is lucky because in our size, this is already 336 pages, we get some of the most surprising and bizarre of Chandler Brossard's writings, and it abounds with adolescent humor told in a young adult way and an old man's dirty-minded way, let's say. It starts with a short, almost a novella called A Chimney Sweep Comes Clean, from Time in England. And then the second part is Dirty Books for Little Folks, and that's what I'm going to read from. Then there's Postcards, Don't You Just Wish You Were Here? And I'll just read, I'll just turn to the first one I come to. This is a postcard from In a Pig's Eye, Wyoming. The next one, I'll give you one more title. Down But Not Out, Idaho. So those are some of the names of the places. Then there's, there's more. Shifty Sacred Songs, Traditionally a Place of Banishment, Closing the Gap, are other sections of the book. Then I'm going to turn to Dirty Books for Little Folks. This is Little Red Riding Hood, the little girl who went all the way. There they were, mother and daughter. Mother is, in brackets, a composite of undulants, relaxed at the big walnut table with a jar of the homemade ale. Daughter, coiled blonde promise, in parentheses, flopped on the windowsill and cleaning her nails with a porcupine quill. The mother was half watching her daughter and half watching something in her own head. At one side of the small but not degraded cottage, a fireplace waited for a stick or two. Jesus, exclaimed the mother rather out of nowhere. All the swell clothes you've got, and you have to wear that bloody red hooded cape all the time. It gives me the creeps. What's the matter with you anyway? Uh, that's enough to give you an idea of what he's up to. But some of the wonderful things that make him worth rereading are these little touches. The first paragraph, mother, a composite of undulants, and then daughter, coiled blonde promise. There's a lot to think about there. If you're the type of person who needs trigger warnings, well, fuck off. I mean, in other words, just don't read Brossard. You can do without him if you need trigger warnings. Brossard would have got. I think if he were alive today, he would have a chapter in here called Trigger Warnings. And I don't know what he would do with them, but I think he'd have a blast with them. Trigger warnings, you sensitive assholes. Trigger warnings. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Speaking of trigger warnings, I forgot to do something I was going to do. Here's one of our recent books, Lauren Fairbanks. And the reason I found this there is she's mentioned a couple times in here. And one of the times, it's as, I think it was the early 90s that Brossard got her published by Dalkey Archive. I don't remember the name of the book right this second, but that's a problem with my age. I'm just not going to make an ass out of myself stumbling over it and trying to come up with the title. But Sister Carrie, by the way, is the title. Anyway, Prison Mars is, I think, a really interesting glimpse into the mind of a young writer who, according to Stephen Moore, was influenced by William Burroughs. And there's a bit in here about all the people William Burroughs influenced. And it's very surprising. It makes me think I better go back and read some more William Burroughs. But this book, I just say that, the author, Lauren Fairbanks, can write crazy old bitter bitch better than any writer I've ever come across. It's really funny to me, and maybe someday Stephen Moore will tell all of us what it means. Or Lauren Fairbanks won't. She'll say, just read it again. If you don't get it, read it again, and it would be a pleasure. I read about a third of it or so, and was just laughing most of the time. And then something interfered with my momentum. I set it aside. I started it again. I read the first third again in order to read the second and third thirds. And, so it can be read more than once. Anyway, let's call this an afterword. All right. So these are the books that, I guess here's one of the books that we have that's a hidden gem, and you need to read it. But this is a celebration of Chandler Brossard, and I think the best you could say about Chandler Brossard was what was said by Zach Tanner, and bears repeating. Which I would not mention to note, but to note that the liberated imagination of Chandler Brossard's fiction was essential to my recovery. He's what I think the best thing that a writer can be, in some cases, is an antidote to current life. And I would say that Chandler Brossard is an antidote to modern life. And with that extra kick of still nailing pertinent hypocrisies, as he did when he mentioned the Israelis in, I think it was in this book. And so scabby Arabs, lots of fun ahead. These are big fat books that are wonderful. There's a picture of them. Oh wait, no, there's what am I saying? What am I saying? We got we got an actual picture of him right there. Yeah, yeah, that's Chandler Brossard. And while I'm at it, I really ought to throw in that we do have the poetry collection with a couple of short pieces that is very much about her father. Um, the in what was it again? Instinctive Heresies, lovely title by Iris Brossard. And you know, if you're interested in Chandler Brossard, this is something you've got to have. It's very thin, but then again, some of you are probably really thin too, and keep an eye on that because there's a lot of it going around, especially in Gaza. Sorry, there I went political again, but I just can't keep my mouth shut these days. The U.S. has an ironclad commitment to Israel, and but luckily, it isn't entirely clad in iron because apparently Biden told Netanyahu, "We're not going to take part in your response to the very measured response of the sane regime in Iran." Yeah, okay, I know I'm not religious either, but let's face it, in these days, if anybody can be trusted with a nuclear weapon, it's Iran, not Israel. Okay, that's all for that part. I never get comments on the political things that I say. I understand we want to escape into books or whatever, although I'm not going to condemn anyone for that. But yeah, anyway, Brossard never escaped it, and it's always there. The content is always there, especially in the last years. He's very funny, and he's dead on. And all the enemies of my historical reading on Vietnam are just skewered, and truths are told, and so on. Meanwhile, he's just violating all sensibilities that you bring to a book, which suggests that you don't bring any but maybe some intellectual sensibilities and some sensibilities of humor and the willingness to accept openly. These are the things to take to Brossard. Thanks. I hope the lighting is good. Thanks, Dr. Moore.